Hi, and welcome to News Desk. I'm Melissa Chan.
And I'm Amien Essif.
So, Chinese tech company DeepSeek released an artificial intelligence bot that put American AI companies into a tailspin this week. We're going to kick things off by playing you some of that panic.
DeepSeek sent a shockwave. Well, that is an understatement. It's like a nuclear bomb.
Sort of almost pull the carpet out, if you like, under this AI trade, which has been rallying across 2024.
It sent stock markets tumbling and started to fuel debates about competition between the US and China.
It's caused a bit of an upset because people thought that it wouldn't really be possible to build such a good AI unless you're big tech.
It does suggest that maybe we don't need to throw tens of billions of dollars at these issues in order to develop something that's usable.
It's #1 on App Store, and it sent a big wave across U.S. tech, shot across the bow from China to the U.S.
So there you have it. DeepSeek is currently #1 in Apple's App Store. It works very well and uses far less processing power than its competitors. In other words, it's cheap and it costs less, and that raises a ton of questions about the American approach the last few years of investing billions and billions into AI companies. That's what we're asking. Will China's DeepSeek burst the American AI bubble?
That's right. And to discuss this at the news desk itself, we have DW's Clifford Coonan from DW Business with a focus on Asia. So we'll be getting to you about our questions about political effects of this in China, especially. We have one of the faces of DW News Desk, Forrest. She's been weeding through all the headlines and looking at the reporting that's been done on this. So we're going to come to you very shortly. And then usually in the background, but this time at the desk in the bright lights of the show, Dustin Hemmerlein.
He's been allowed out.
Yeah, exactly. The backbone of the news desk. But you're going to be looking at the chat and making sure we get to everybody's questions and comments.
Yeah, let us know your questions in the chat, and I will bring them to the table, and we'll share them here to our experts.
Yeah, I mean, judging on social media, there should be plenty of questions and comments. A lot of people talking about, DeepSeek this week. And soon we'll also have special guests joining us, Isaac Stone-Fish from Strategy Risks and Viola Zhou from Rest of World, a technology news outlet. So we have that to look forward to.
That's right. And just to get to our comments right off the bat, we have already in our community tab have been getting questions that we want to get to in this show. Nijad Banam says nobody will win the race except AI itself. And then Happy Melon says, I don't see a threat. I see a gift to the world. The best AI model is open sourced on the hand of people, open sourced and then in the hands of people, not some Silicon Valley oligarchs. So two sides of the same coin there. I think what they're saying here is that it's going to change the world. The first things for the worst, the second things for the better, probably. We also had an interesting conversation about censorship, which we want to get to later. Mr. E says, ask DeepSeek about the Tiananmen Square massacre. Enjoy how apps limit access to information. Deleted it after one question. So he doesn't find that useful. And then in response, Reggie says, ask ChatGPT about USA's war crimes in Iraq. And then somebody actually posted a response to that, said, well, they told me everything about Iraq, Abu Ghraib, the Haditha massacre, Blackwater, white phosphorus, and Fallujah. So there's a raging debate right now on our post about which is the most censorious, US or Chinese AI.
Well, there's definitely a lot to talk about. And to kick things off, as usual, let's go to do the poll question, and then we'll get to more comments and jump into it.
Yes, exactly. If you guys are joining right now, welcome. We do have a poll question in the YouTube chat. You can just find it in the chat window. Feel free to contribute in the chat, ask us questions. We'll try to put into our experts. And the poll for today, you can answer it. The question is, DeepSeek promises to be cheaper and open source. Is that a good thing? And the answers could be, your answers could be, yes, it is a good thing. AI should be free. Governments need to regulate it. That's the second answer. And the third answer, fine as long as you can use it. And fourth answer, no one should be using AI. Let us know what you think, and we'll tally up the poll at the end, and let the table know and see what our community thinks about this.
Yeah, as usual, I'm very curious about this. We almost always get a surprising answer, so don't forget to do that poll because it's not rigged. We really do get sometimes the opposite of what we think we're going to get, and it always has generates good discussion on that.
Yeah, so we're going to turn to Alex because I know you spent quite a bit of time looking through things. This is such an insane moment because the global markets have lost $1 trillion in value in response to this Chinese AI app. I'd love for you to talk about it and tell us what's happening online, because so much of the conversation, I mean, this is involving all the tech players. So the big tech players in the United States are also online, weighing in with their thoughts. Everyone has thoughts.
Yeah, everyone has thoughts, and there have been lots on social media, memes in particular. I'll get to those in a second. But let's just remember what has happened, and you've just talked about it yourself, Melissa, but it was on Monday that the NASDAQ, so that's the NASDAQ Composite Index, it concentrates on 100 big tech companies and growth companies. So, for example, your Amazon, your Apple, your Alphabet, and NVIDIA, important one to mention there. It fell by more than 3% on Monday, wiping off, as you said, $1 trillion, a phenomenal amount of money. And I mentioned NVIDIA there. If you can share my screen, we can just see a graph here from the Financial Times, which just shows what happened to NVIDIA here on Monday. It fell by a whopping 17%, losing $600 billion just on Monday alone. You can see that it's beginning to rise again, but it certainly hasn't made up for those losses. Now, NVIDIA is a chip maker. It's the company that these big AI developers have been relying on to give them these chips that they need to try to develop AI. And DeepSeek had said, actually, we didn't use quite so many of those chips. That's what they've claimed anyway. And the ones that they mostly used were the lower performing H800 chips. And that was because of US export controls. So controls to stop the US from exporting those to China. So all of that had this huge impact on the markets, leading to what we've just talked about. Let's just look now at some of these memes that have appeared on social media. This is the first one. I'll make that a little bit bigger. And this is taken, of course, from Iron Man, for anyone who knows that film. And here we have Mark Zuckerberg's face there imposed on that character. And the whole point of this, of course, well, actually, the words that were with this particular meme, which was on both X and on other social media sites as well, DeepSeek was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps. So the point is, they did it so cheaply. They didn't. It was, they're saying it was around $6 million is what DeepSeek claims they spent on building this particular model, rather than the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been used. So that's one meme. Let's just move quickly to the next one.
Talk about that in terms of the actual cost of...
Right, that's controversial.
Yeah.
So we're sticking now with the whole superhero idea. Here we have Batman, DeepSeek, and then that's OpenAI. OpenAI, of course, is the owner of ChatGPT. So again, DeepSeek appearing to have won that competition.
A thwack there.
A thwack, yeah. Now, does anyone remember this? Does anyone remember this guy?
Yes.
Yep. The Paris
From
Olympics.
Turkey, right?
From Turkey, very good. Yeah, his name is Yusuf Dikec, and he won a medal. I love this. Look at my big hand on the screen. So he's got his hand in his pocket, just these relaxed glasses, and he won a medal for that. And he became a bit of an internet sensation because of the fact that he wasn't wearing the whole outfit that every other shooter was in the Olympics. So next to him, we've got OpenAI, otherwise,
fully equipped OpenAI.
So
trying too hard.
Obviously, this competitor was not really wearing all of that, but it's the idea that OpenAI, huge, multi-billion dollars, and then DeepSeek,
this
allegedly
scrappy sort of
And what's wild about it is the David and Goliath story, but
Yes.
that's what the memes are trying to portray, but it's exactly the reason why NVIDIA lost so much of its stock, right?
Correct.
Because the stock is reacting to people's love of a good David and Goliath story. So sometimes the memes can lead to the stock market crash rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I think it's in some ways it's a classic narrative, isn't it? It's like you've got the whole global South versus the West, and the timing of this is really interesting, I think, for one, that, I mean, it's been around for a while. And, I mean, July last year, there was an interview with Liang Wenfeng, who's the founder. He did this kind of as a sideline, but he was running a hedge fund. He's from Zhejiang University, and he has a hedge fund called High Flyer. He's not a David. I mean, he's a billionaire. And this is a big story, and his story tallies very much with how the Communist Party is trying to grow in China and to put forward national champions. It's the timing as well, given that Trump has just arrived in office in the US. There's pressure on exports of chips to China. All of these kind of things are happening at once. And this is, as Dan Ives, the analyst in the intro, said, this is a shot across the bows. That same analyst also said that this is the Temu of AI.
Oh, wow.
You know, he's saying this is ultimately a buying opportunity that, you know, yes, it's great if these tech stocks are really expensive and the amount of money they put into development is probably way, way, way too much. This is kind of selling a different story. It's saying that it didn't cost that much. But there's a narrative being massaged there. There's a picture being painted there, I think. You know, he was... Liang Wenfeng was brought in to meet Li Qiang, who's the premier of China in recent days. The images from that meeting were very, very carefully orchestrated. He's, you know, this isn't Jack Ma. This isn't a flashy tycoon. This is a guy wearing a sort of...
Actually, I think we have footage
I think we have
of that.
this picture,
In the control room, if you want to, pull it up of that meeting. And so tell us about, yes, the image.
Yeah. Now, if you look at what he's wearing here, you know, I mean, there's Li Qiang there, and this is
Li Qiang?
The person we've just seen with the glasses,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then the guy in the blue jacket there, that's Liang Wenfeng, and he's kind of dressed like a, you know, when you've lived in China, you know this look. It's not super stylized. It's off the rack. Mm-hmm. It's kind of almost like a model worker look for the early 21st century, but except he's a tech version. You know, he only employs young graduates from Zhejiang University, people born after 1998, which is a very important cutoff point in terms of how China views education. And but they're all kind of model workers. It's also part of this Chinese Communist Party narrative that you don't want these tycoons who are emulating in some ways the oligarchs in the West. So it's a very, I think the whole way the narrative has been constructed, I think is fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really David and Goliath. Maybe it's more like Goliath and Goliath, because frankly, we're talking about...
Goliath.
Yeah, I mean, China is the second largest economy in the world. Let's not it's not exactly... I won't say a small country, right, but at the risk of offending a small country.
They have succeeded. DeepSeek has succeeded in making itself look like a David in the sense that they did it with so much fewer resources.
Supposedly.
I mean, that is a slingshot compared to what the U.S. companies are getting in funding. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about that later.
So I've just got a couple more memes, just quickly. So if we just share my screen again, I just quite enjoyed this one that I found. 3 dragons. Here we are. It's the one on my right, which is Europe, the EU, with the logo of a bottle of water. Can you see that? So in other words, while everybody else, as in China and the US, are in this fight for AI, where's Europe? Just a bit lost. So that kind of tickled me a bit, being European myself.
With the funny-looking eyes.
Exactly, googly eyes, just totally out of it.
Yeah.
And then this last one is interesting. So this is a warning from Dispropaganda on X. Make that a bit bigger. And the heading with this was DeepSeek is open source. The reference here that this is China's Trojan horse. In other words, it's a type of malware, it's a virus, it's disguised as legitimate software, but here people are now downloading it, inviting it into their homes, you know, because it's free. Come on in and look who's pulling the Trojan horse. It's Winnie the Pooh, which of course is a reference to President Xi.
Yeah.
So this is
not quite malware, though. It's more that like people are handing over their data potentially.
I mean,
I think there's a very interesting point on this. Sorry, just one thing that's being discussed at the moment is that DeepSeek is going to be talking to Bytedance, which owns TikTok, and one of the accusations always leveled against TikTok is that it has way too much of our information already, and so should an OpenAI application like this tie up with TikTok, even indirectly through Bytedance or directly, depending on what you think. It's also very significant, you know, and I think that point needs to be made.
All right, so let's just dive into. I want to just bring up our first guest first, and then maybe see if there are any questions or comments that Viola, Zhou can respond to. Viola, thanks so much for joining us. I think you're joining us from New York, and Viola is a senior reporter with Rest of World. I highly recommend you guys check out Rest of World. I sign up to their weekly newsletter to know what's really going on in tech outside of the United States. So many interesting things going on in Southeast Asia, in East Asia, Latin America, Africa, and Rest of World does such a fantastic job with that. So Viola, welcome.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the shout outs.
Yeah, so I think we just want to start off by asking you a little bit. I think you've heard a little bit of our conversation, but you know, tell us a little bit more about DeepSeek and what kind of Chinese company it is. And after that, let's just check in with the chat and see if there are any questions that folks want to throw your way.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a Goliath versus Goliath story, but more like a hidden Goliath versus the more obvious Goliath story. I think I heard the little bit conversation about how it fit into kind of the Communist Party strategy. I do want to point out, I think even within China, people are kind of like shocked within the Chinese AI, the larger AI community, because this breakthrough is not coming from like Baidu, Alibaba, Bytedance, and I imagine it's possible to the governments. These like companies like DeepSeek are not on the top of their radar. So I think it's like also like a shocking moment in China that a company is seen as more of an outliner because it's essentially part of a quant trading company. It's not a big tech company. That they are able to like put together so many talents, they are able to make this work. Yeah, so like I read through the founder is like a very low profile person, but from his two major interviews given to Chinese media, I do feel like he's very idealistic, and then I do feel like he is like being quite genuine in terms of like believing that he wants to be part of the AI race, be like on the front to get to the front of the AI race, and then he does believing by having together all these hiring these like top students from like Tsinghua and Peking University, giving them resources, he can make things work. So yeah, it's a very, very fascinating case and also very interesting to see discussion from both sides.
Great. I have a question about innovation, but before I do that, maybe we should check in, or how are we doing? Okay, so I mean, it sounds like, I think in some ways people are also surprised because there are stereotypes about Chinese companies and how they're not innovative. And as you say, even people in China are surprised by this innovation. Do you think that's a stereotype? Do you think it's wrong to think of Chinese engineers as less inventive than the folks that Google or OpenAI have sort of gathered? There's a big debate in the United States about immigration, and we certainly know that there are plenty of engineers from China and India and elsewhere who go to Silicon Valley to work for these AI companies. But talk a little bit about innovation in China and the stereotypes and maybe some of the things that are true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we kind of assume like the best talents from China, after they graduate, they try to go to the US for graduate studies. And a lot of them, they do stay in the US because they make more money there. They can work along with kind of other good engineers from all around the world in the US, in Silicon Valley. But it's not entirely true. Like a while ago, we did this very interesting story about actually like when Microsoft was trying to move some of its Chinese engineers to the US and then to like several Western countries, and then they gave out offers. And then I talked to the AI engineers at Microsoft. Some of them, they actually didn't want to move. They're like, we live a perfect, comfortable middle-class life in China. We're happy here. And then we have a lot of career options here. So I think as the economy develops, like even though it's like slowing down, so a lot of Chinese people, they do feel like they want to stay here. A lot of students, they're not moving to the US for further studies. Or we can see some of the DeepSeek employees, they did internships at NVIDIA, or like they studied, they got their PhD in the US and then they returned to China to join this team. I think, it's a reminder that we still have some of the top talents in China, but why this innovation happened at DeepSeek, not like Alibaba or like at Bytedance that also hired a lot of the very good engineers. I think the founder also pointed out that they had a less hierarchy here. It's a small team. There's some very unique company culture that exists at DeepSeek. I think there's no doubt that China has the talents, but it's just like how they use them, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that also leads to me wondering about, I mean, Chinese leader Xi Jinping must be very happy. He's had an AI policy, and I wonder to what extent his policies have contributed to DeepSeek's success, or it sounds like it's actually not, and DeepSeek kind of was doing its own thing. I'd love to bring in our third guest, Isaac Stonefish. Isaac, I think you've been listening a little bit, and you're also joining us from New York. Thanks so much. Isaac Stonefish is with Strategy Risks. And full disclosure, Isaac, actually, this is a fun fact. It's not a disclosure like it's a secret, but fun fact, Isaac, myself, and Clifford were all in Beijing as foreign correspondents at the same time in an earlier era. And Isaac at the time was with Newsweek. I was with Al Jazeera English, and you were with...
Irish Times.
Yeah, Irish Times, and also doing some stuff for
and
film, right?
Oh, yeah, I was covering the film sector, too, for Variety and Hollywood Reporter, yeah.
So there you go. So, hi, Isaac.
No. Yeah, no.
Hi, Melissa. Here.
Thanks for joining us. So, yes, I was just asking about whether DeepSeek is a result of Xi Jinping's policies or in spite of. I'd love for you to weigh in, and if Viola or Clifford has any thoughts to add to that after.
I think probably despite Xi Jinping's policies, there's a big debate about Chinese innovation, whether or not the Communist Party fosters it or squelches it, and how much more innovative tech companies would be without the Communist Party. And I think in this case, again, we're still waiting to see the truth around spending roughly $6 million, what the background of the app was. But I do feel like, broadly speaking, companies like DeepSeek and Chinese tech founders would be far happier and far more successful with a far less repressive government.
Isaac, I apologize. I actually forgot to ask you if you could also tell us a little bit about the Strategy Risks, that the organization that you founded, because I think it's related and connected to what we're talking about today.
We run a business intelligence firm called Strategy Risks, which helps big US and global companies manage and reduce their China risk. And so to understand various threats emanating from the Communist Party, due diligence, analysis, consulting that helps businesses navigate usually away from what the Communist Party is doing. We see China risk a lot like climate risk. We feel like it's a very important factor that one can measure. One can talk about country risks around the world. You could look at India risk. You could certainly look at America risk or even Canada risk. But we do feel like companies need to understand that they've been long mispricing their risks of being involved with China, sharing data with Chinese entities, working closely with the party. And so we help them understand that.
And going back to the question of whether or not it was because or despite of the policies of the Chinese Communist Party, Nilan Chaturvedi, one of our regulars, said, since this LLM is built on low cost, at the same time that China is under sanctions, that it wasn't using second-grade NVIDIA GPU data, and it's open source. Isn't this a good signal that middle powers can develop their own model? And I think that gets right to the heart of the question. Why did this happen in China if it wasn't the Chinese leadership that had something to do with it? Everybody's looking for like what country is going to develop the next big technology, and China seems to have done it this week anyway.
China is certainly not a middle power. They're the other superpower with the United States. I also feel like the Communist Party likes to structure things as if what Chinese people's successes are comes from the party. But if you have an honest, open conversation with a Chinese tech founder, away from phones and devices, I'd say most of them would much rather be in Singapore or Japan or the United States or Canada. There's a reason that the founder of Bytedance doesn't live in China. There's a reason why Jack Ma is petrified of the party now. And there's a reason why when tech founders get to a certain size, they either do what Pony Ma of Tencent does and coddle themselves deep within the party, or they figure out a way to try to be as far out of sight as possible.
But this development did come out of China. It didn't come out of a Chinese expatriate living in another country under what we would call freedom.
I mean, I think that raises a lot of questions about... Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Think about how many other developments would have come out of China if not for the party. I think when you look at other industries and other places where China is the leader, more in the mining sector or consumer goods or even in EVs, I think you could point to the strength of party policies. But I would encourage you to try to have some private conversations with Chinese founders and ask them about Baofan or Jack Ma or their friends who've been harassed or tortured or threatened and what that does for innovation. And I feel like people usually find that scarier than a paycheck.
Yeah, I think just with what Isaac says there, I think there's a selective approach to innovation, and there's certain areas that can be easily controlled, that innovation is tolerated, and only to a certain point. As we've seen, you mentioned Jack Ma. He was quickly removed from his own company. I think here it was interesting looking at those pictures of Liang Wenfeng and Li Qiang, and the way there's a sense of surprise. I don't think the Communist Party saw this one coming. It basically was a hedge fund that was doing stock trading software that this guy did a sideline, and suddenly it turns into this OpenAI thing. But at that meeting, they also closed off a number of advanced AI companies to focus on this story, which they're now trying to paint as a kind of a national pride competing against the US story. Which is, and obviously it's a great achievement. I mean, he's done really well. But I get the sense that they didn't really see this coming, and now they're trying to own the story. Yeah. And I think that's the big difference. So while it is an achievement, and it may be it only cost $5.8 million or whatever, it's also $5.8 million coming off the back of a much larger investment. So I think there's a lot more. There's a lot of issues there.
Yeah, I actually want to turn to Viola to ask about that. I don't know if you've had the chance to dig into a lot of the debate and start investigating and reporting on just how reliable this almost $6 million figure is, and if you could explain, because there's also a lot of spin from U.S. AI companies who want to downplay. So they have every incentive to talk about, NVIDIA and this stuff in Singapore, the movement of chips out of Singapore and all this kind of, I don't want to say conspiracy theories, but there's a lot of sort of people trying to explain that the cost isn't really at the $6 million that it took to produce this software. Viola, I wonder if you've had the chance to and what you can tell us. And I say this because I know that it is Lunar New Year. So, 恭喜发财, 新年快乐. And it well could be that I don't even know if you have a day off, and here you are talking to us on News Desk. So I wanted to get that out of the way too.
Yeah, Happy New Year to everyone. So the 5 million figure is only the training cost for sure. Like there's a much bigger investment behind that. But if we kind of trust the paper, I think there's no doubt that they made this with much, even with all the investments. They said they bought 10,800 chips before the sanctions came in. And then with like staff salaries, top engineers, even though I'm sure DeepSeek pays them a lot in the Chinese sense, but the salaries will be much lower than what their peers make in Silicon Valley. So the overall investment still would be much smaller than what Meta, OpenAI, and the American companies have invested. So like, yeah, I think there's a reason to say that they did it with much less money. Yeah, we're like talking about chips, sanctions, people posting doubts. And then the founder himself says their biggest issue isn't money, it's the export control. So I think they do realize they're still under they're still being restricted by the chip control.
Isaac, this is kind of right up your alley, right? Export control and stuff like that.
We reported on like TSMC and then how the US is trying to make their own chips. Yeah, it's very interesting to see like people suddenly kind of like got maybe a wake up call, realizing, coming up, maybe we don't need that much chips. I think, we will see what happens in the future, but like at the moment, like DeepSeek is still using NVIDIA chips. One of the reasons they did it, because even like compared with other big Chinese companies, they made a kind of early move to buy more chips than others, buy more NVIDIA chips than others. So like chips are still important,
right?
Hopefully.
Isaac, do you have anything to add to that?
I think if or when the Trump administration gets serious on export controls, it'll strongly reduce the ability of big US companies to engage with and sell to and partner with Chinese entities. So when or if Trump decides, hey, this is a problem, or David Sachs, the AI czar, decides it's a problem, then you have to strongly reduce a company like Microsoft's ability to partner with the Communist Party and make it clear to them that following Chinese laws and sharing source code and vulnerabilities and data and training techniques can strengthen the party in a way that can be inimical to US interests. Whether or not they'll do that, I'm not sure. It's much easier to say, hey, we're going to put export controls, but you can still go and set up joint ventures with state-owned enterprises and use that to transfer technology. A lot of times companies get their technology stolen, but because they're deeply entangled with the party state, they don't talk about it publicly, or they don't talk about it publicly until years later when the technology is out of date.
Two questions I want to bring in here. Asungot says, just imagine the fact that China let DeepSeek go open source means it is just one of their mediocre AI that we don't yet know. And I think what they're getting at here is that there might be other more powerful things that they haven't exposed yet. And then on the same note, Julian Perez says, what can we expect from China in the near future, considering their advance in AI technology? So looking at, is this just a fluke, or is this the beginning of China bringing out a lot of developments that might shock the world?
Fascinating thing about DeepSeek and Chinese AI textual models is they're garbage on China, and they don't reflect the reality of China. They reflect reality strained through the lens of the Communist Party. And so I think if you look at them from a global stance, they can be cutting edge, they can be better than anyone else, but their answers on China tend to be garbage because they're so petrified of offending the Communist Party, and they amplify what the party wants them to amplify and suppress what the party doesn't. And sometimes this is things, the obvious, the Xi Jinping, Xinjiang, Winnie the Pooh, but then you ask DeepSeek about transgender issues and it talks about how the party supports all types of people, and you just think, well, I just wanted to know what transgender, you're not going to tell me what transgender is. You're just going to say that the Communist Party supports all types of people.
All lives matter.
Yeah, we did a lot of experiments here looking at what kind of strange answers we got from
yeah, we had a lot of fun. Isaac, I'm sure you guys both have had a lot of fun. I was initially censored when I asked about myself. Isaac, are you popular with DeepSeek? Viola, are you popular with DeepSeek?
I should try asking about myself after this.
You haven't? Oh, it's the first question.
Someone sent me a screenshot that said that I had a Rhodes Scholarship, which was lovely to hear. So thank you, DeepSeek, for giving me a Rhodes Scholarship. That's all I wanted.
That's very interesting. Clifford.
I'm well respected. I've got a balanced perspective, especially on complex topics. But on someone else then ran my name, and they got a different readout saying that I should also be aware of the laws of China.
Yeah,
that's the thing. We're getting all these different answers, and and weird things. Like my wife, who was working for the New York Times, Kirsten Tatlow, was also revealed as a Washington Post author, and I don't think she's ever written for the Washington Post. So it's and Melissa, we got lots of different answers.
Well, let's show that we did a little experiment, right?
Yeah, we filmed it, so we'll play it while we're talking about it, because and then see you guys. I think that it's a fun little video of DeepSeek.
Yeah, so basically we just asked it, who is Melissa Chan? And we got various answers at various times. So this is the one that we did film, and it kind of gave. Yeah, here we go. This was our second question, basically. What critical reporting has reporter Melissa Chan published? Yeah.
So the first time it was a question just about me, and then I think it spit out something kind of pretty generic.
Well, the weird thing is that it gives you like a proper answer that you would find on a Google result, right? And then it kind of like erases it.
And then it changed its mind.
And it gives you like a press statement, basically. And then so what I noticed in there was it said, we believe that, we believe. It kept saying, we believe. And we were like, okay, what do you mean by we? And here's what it spit out, that referring to the collective voice of the Chinese government and the Communist Party of China, which...
So DeepSeek is admitting that it's speaking on behalf of the Chinese government.
It's not an answer I expected to get, honestly.
No,
it was kind of like,
maybe it's a mistake.
We are the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, so that's fun. I don't know if you guys can see that, Viola and Isaac, but that was the next follow-up question. Far less important, asking about me, but just sort of like, why are you guys using this pronoun of we? What are you referencing?
It just seems so blatant, and it almost seems like they haven't like professionalized their censorship yet. That because this model might be new, it's doing weird things like spitting out a proper answer first, then literally deleting it in front of your eyes and being like, oh, let's talk about something else. Or it says it refers to itself as we, and then in first person, plural, and then you ask, what is we? And it says the Chinese Communist Party. So it's like admitting that it's the mouth of the Chinese Communist Party.
So I guess the question for both of you guys and also Clifford is, after the initial round of panic, everyone's sort of taking a deep breath, the markets kind of dipped a little bit. It sounds scary, but I understand that it dropped back to levels for like NVIDIA where it was at in October. So all things considered, not that bad of a loss, and probably going to go creep back up in the coming days. But is there too much hype about DeepSeek? Is it overrated? That's the follow-up stuff. And I ask this knowing that, of course, every other AI company does want to spin it. So we are in an ecosystem on social media and even among mainstream media where there is a battle of minds and interpretation for just how big a deal DeepSeek is. We have Mark Andreessen calling it Sputnik, and then suddenly everyone's using the word Sputnik. But then now there's pushback on that. So yeah, Viola first, and then Isaac, and we'll go to Clifford.
Yeah, I think on the technical parts, we still need to see how things goes, how other companies are going to build on this model, how are they going to replicate follow the same method. I think one of the reasons they made it so low cost is because they came out with a new methodology in terms of how they train the AI model. And I feel like one thing I realized from this case, despite all the geopolitical tensions, actually within the AI community, people are still very keen on learning from each other, working together. I was also really fascinated by the conversations, a bunch of during the Lunar New Year, a bunch of DeepSeek engineers, they got on X, they suddenly got tons of followers. Every one of their tweets explaining a small technical issue got thousands of likes, and then they are pretty excited themselves. And then they are interacting with engineers in America and elsewhere. So I think this is so hyped up because it's a China thing, and then people didn't expect it out of China. But in terms of like how like AI technologies get upgraded, advanced in general, it's still like a lot of different companies working together. And then sometimes people don't really, within the community, people don't really care like about where each other is from. It just when the public is looking at it, it suddenly become like this is only China thing, and all the other things are from like the US.
Isaac, is it overhyped?
Alibaba, probably, but these things create their own reality. It feels like once or twice a year, there's a China story that becomes a mainstream story. It reminds me of the NBA censorship story about Hong Kong and how that just dominated the airwaves. And I think for those of us who cover China, it's always fascinating to see what makes it really big in the mainstream and becomes a top tier story. Alibaba just released an AI model today, I think, that they say surpasses DeepSeek's. Certainly not technical enough to know whether or not that's the case, and often surpasses often a branding word as opposed to a technical term. I think I certainly hope it's not a Sputnik moment, because that was decades before the end of the Cold War. And I do not wish upon either the US or China decades of this. I mean, perhaps it's better than the alternative of a war, but I do hope that something else happens that prevents us from having this conversation with relatively same terms 30 years hence.
Clifford, any thoughts on DeepSeek and the hype?
Yeah, I think what it's interesting because it's kind of highlighted maybe some of the excesses of the tech world in the West, and you know, the fact that, you know, even if it wasn't as cheap as they're saying it was done, you know, it makes you realize that so much of what happens in tech is actually about speculative stocks and about investment. It's not really about the tech that's involved. And the fact that it's open source, you know, once you take this offline and you use it offline, it's a pretty good tool. It will add to the broader sum of knowledge. But that has to be taken against the background that, you know, the leadership that is talking to the company, I guarantee, has no understanding of what this is. There's a huge lack of understanding within the senior Communist Party leadership about any of this tech stuff. And that's kind of serious because they're in control. And I think that that's going to be a big question, I think, going forward, is how they're going to deal with these things. Because it's very, very difficult to control AI because it creates its own reality, just like these stories create their own reality. You know, that's what it's about. It's a machine learning process, and that's going to be a really big issue for the Chinese Communist Party.
To be fair, the Biden was clear to me that he was not aware what artificial intelligence was, and his team had some people who understood it, but a lot of people who didn't as well. I'm not entirely sure Trump fully understands either. The guy apparently reads out what he wants to tweet for somebody else to tweet for him and doesn't own his own computer. So just to put things in perspective, although I think the assumption is that the White House at any time, whoever the president may be, has a better brain trust on these things than the Chinese leadership.
I think it's structural. Sorry, I think it's structural within the Communist Party that it can't allow these, you know, these people are channeled in a particular direction because that's how it works, these silos that they have within the party. So I think it's going to be a problem for them, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, what you said about the whole AI bubble being about financing, about it's about the money behind it, not necessarily about the technology. To me, it does really feel like an arms race. I think Sputnik is a bad example because the Soviets were the first to actually put a satellite into orbit. They were the first to do this amazing thing. This is not the first, obviously. This is just an improvement on something that's already existed. But it does get to the fact that this is like, it's doing stuff that's more like magic tricks at this point. Boston Consulting Group just put out a study that said that only 4% of businesses that use AI have gotten any real value from it. 4%. So at this point, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, the Trump administration, while they're trying to cut money from school programs and drug addiction clinics and stuff like this, they're investing $500 billion into AI infrastructure, even though we don't even know what the value is. We just know that in the future it might be valuable, and if you're not the best at it, then you're losing, which is exactly like an arms race. If you don't have the most nuclear bombs, then you're going to lose some theoretical war in the future, but nobody benefits from a nuclear bomb at this.
Although just to that 500 billion, I believe, is getting commitments from private sector.
Okay.
So it's not taking
still,
from.
But look at all the money. You could get commitments from the private sector to get kids dental work done in the U.S.
Totally.
I mean,
totally.
It's still money that we could use for other things.
Go ahead, Isaac.
Yeah, that is a common one. Oh, I don't think U.S. tech investors want to invest in dentistry unless they see.
No, I know, but they're the richest people in the world.
Let's just cut to Dustin, because I know you've been in chat. Are people interested in what we're talking about? What are they asking?
Guys, there's so much happening in the chat. It's crazy. We get a lot of comments. Thanks. Keep them coming. I'll try to summarize like the main things. First of all, I think I speak for everyone in the chat when I say Happy Chinese New Year. They very much
Lunar New Year, because it's not the only Chinese are not the only ones who celebrate.
And there we go. Happy Lunar New Year. And I think a major point to make is that a lot of the points that our experts have been making did also appear in the chat before the experts made them. So I feel like I want to give props to the chat for that. A lot of them are telling us about both Western and Chinese censorship and discussing amongst them like these like instances and what's worse and where maybe the West is having double standards and where maybe China is really implying very heavy censorship compared to the West. Those are like kind of the main storylines. And then we do also have the point that Amien mentioned before is being echoed in the chat about Europe not really playing this game. They are adding also India in this mix, and the chat is making a big point. I want to quote like users Liang, Ritik, and Millennial Mind. They all made this point that, India and Europe are not really playing this game yet. And this might be an opportunity, though, as well, because if they teamed up, they might be able to actually get something done in the AI world. I think that's kind of it from the chat.
Yeah. I'd just like to say one thing, which is that Dustin and I actually set up a DeepSeek account earlier because I was hoping, I don't know if you can just share my screen again, but I was hoping that we could do some live DeepSeeking. So this is what it looks like when you go onto the page. And then this is me in the chat. And for the whole of this stream so far, I have been asking DeepSeek, are you working? And it keeps saying, this server is busy. Please try again later.
It's very, very popular.
So it's very popular, and this has been pretty much the situation for most of today. So far, I'll just try again. Are you working? And I will let you know if we get a response, because it would be quite fun to put something in.
We can play with it. But meanwhile, Isaac and Viola, I want to ask you about this thing with censorship, because obviously we know that the Chinese apps do censor sensitive terms, censor us sometimes, and we've talked about that. But there is also a type of, should we use the word censorship with U.S. AI chatbots? Certain ones seem to avoid political content because they don't. America is such a divided society. So the censorship is not necessarily driven from the top down, but also thinking about the constituents or the potential consumer base. Where is the difference? Are they both equally pernicious? And of course, we have a Trump presidency that has made it very clear already that they can be very retributive against mainstream media and possibly any company they view as criticizing the president or doing something that they don't like. I don't know. I'll start with Isaac and we'll go to Viola. Just change it up a little bit.
Censorship is a spectrum. It's not a yes or no. There is censorship in the United States, and I would argue in every country in the world. And under Trump, there's more censorship and more self-censorship. There is just orders of magnitude more censorship in China. Both self and otherwise. And we see this through this chatbot. We see this through many, many facets of Chinese life, and it's almost always worse in Chinese than it is in English. There's so many very basic topics of conversation that are dangerous for people to have in China. And the simplest one is, hey, I'm in America. I don't think Trump should be president. I really think the parties should work really hard together to remove Trump from office. Okay, great. Now, say the same thing about Xi Jinping in China. That's a very, very dangerous statement to say, hey, I think we should work together to remove Xi Jinping from office. That's what gets people in jail or disappeared or their families harassed or tortured.
Viola, thoughts about the different kinds of censorship that's happening with all of these tech companies?
Yeah, I think Melissa mentioned it, that one is top down and one is bottom. It's more bottomed up. In the US, at least, there are like a diversity in terms of like what's censored, what's not. We can talk about the methodologies. We can have a debate about what is being censored, what is not, what should be censored in the future if we are using the word censor or like moderation. But in China, there's no conversation about what is censored, what is not. You're not allowed to talk about methodology. Companies, they cannot admit that they cannot open source their censorship AI technology, which actually censorship is a big part of the AI industry. I think a lot of tech companies are struggling. How can we hire fewer humans to do this? Because there are like thousands of actually like Chinese workers. It's a very tiring, like boring job just to censor things. And then they are not yet replaced by AI. So like censorship itself is like a AI technology, but like no one can talk about it. They cannot write papers about like, how do we improve how do we do like automated moderation? We cannot talk about the words that are censored. So I think that's the very important difference there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when Isaac was describing his company earlier, pretty much everything that his company does is literally will get you, has seen people put in jail recently in China because due diligence become equivocal to spying. So I think it was interesting going through the DeepSeek today and getting those same responses. And you talk about AI developing human characteristics, and I know we sort of we impose our own views on it, but it really did feel like that these things. Yes, I'm calculating I'm doing the search. There's a problem with the network. It seemed very human, and a bit kind of like leave me alone. Because it's being blocked from saying, there is really a sense that this is not a coincidence.
I mean, Alex, how's DeepSeek going?
It's still busy.
DeepSeek.
It's still asking me to try again
Maybe
later.
it's fed up with you. It just
Maybe
wants
it
you to leave
is.
him alone. It's like you guys asked too many hard questions.
This time I said hello, but it still didn't. No.
But it can do poetry, right?
Yes.
You brought a poem with you. So it can't give you any information about the Chinese Communist Party that's critical, but it can give you some heartfelt.
Well, this is of course the other aspect to AI is where everyone worries about AI, taking over the world, and it's a different level of threat even to the Communist Party. And on Jordan Schneider's China talk, he quoted
he's a China analyst.
He's a China analyst. Yeah. He quoted a Weibo. There was a debate about this on Weibo, and someone posted, "I never thought there would come a day when I would shed tears for AI." Talking about the existential threat over DeepSeek's ability to write. And the response was, remember, all the words that make you tremble are just echoes that already exist deep within your soul. I am merely a valley that happened to pass by, allowing you to hear the weight of your own voice.
Is this from AI?
This is from AI.
It is from DeepSeek?
Yeah.
Oh.
So this sounds very much like, hey, DeepSeek, give me a lengthy couplet from Tang Dynasty poetry or from an Irish poet. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Any more comments, questions from folks?
Well, I wanted to get to the question why Americans and Chinese companies are leading. I think it sounds like an obvious question, but it's not so obvious. This is what Just Your Average Joe asked. Why are the Americans and Chinese the only ones competing? And then Zhou Liang says Germany is not in the race, not in any race, just a bystander. But Germany is famous for a lot of innovations, but obviously not in AI. And so why do you have these major countries sitting this one out?
Isaac, you want to go first?
US and China, the world's top economies, top innovators. I think that there are plenty of companies in Germany. We've seen some advances from French companies as well, but there's a lot of other companies around the world that would love to be the next DeepSeek or the next OpenAI, and they might. And I think it's one of those things where, when or if a Danish company, becomes the next OpenAI, we'll have all these articles about why the Danish model works. And then if they don't, then we'll say, of course, Denmark couldn't do it.
I mean, Denmark is tops in pharmaceuticals at the moment because of its production of Ozempic. Viola, same question. And I want to add a little bit to it, which is what is the future for DeepSeek in China? Because they were kind of below the radar now. The fact that they are now very much front and center, is it going to actually harm its potential when the Chinese leadership is all over it now?
Yeah, I think China and the US, they both have the money, they have the talents, they have the ecosystem. When a company like DeepSeek, when the founder is like, I wanted to do something about large language models, he have a talent pool to tap into. And then he also has the money from his hedge funds. So those things come together. And yeah, I totally agree. I think one of the biggest challenges for DeepSeek, apart from chips, apart from the actual technology, is attention right now. Before they were left alone, but now with them being framed as a Sputnik moment as part of this, they will definitely get more attention from the government. I think even when the government is like being supportive, sometimes it could be very overwhelming to a startup that they need to like basically keep the government in the loop about what they're doing. Whatever they do will be like closely watched, going to meet the premier every month or so. Maybe not every month, but yeah. And also the attention from America, the attention from the scrutiny, the political scrutiny that before they were directed to TikTok, to Temu, but now part of that we're already seeing it because now the Trump administration is saying like we are going to have like a national security check on DeepSeek. So like how can this is like kind of like a shared struggle for all the Chinese companies. How do we survive in between U.S.-China tensions?
We also
so I think
we have questions about data security and privacy as well. Supervince says DeepSeek may be technically impressive, but what about data privacy? All inputs and outputs are stored on Chinese servers, which raises serious concerns. Who really has access to your data? And DeVos, a DW News Desk regular, says, is DeepSeek safe to download?
Oh, I don't know. Who knows that? Isaac.
Too late for us.
Yeah, I think.
Easy one. Oh, go ahead, Viola.
No, I was just saying, like, if they following the model of like TikTok and other companies, I think if they're serious about providing services to global companies, having a major share of global users, they will have to do something to move their at least like overseas users' data, or like do a separation thing, move some of the data to overseas servers, just to like, that's part of their future like compliance effort, I think.
Yeah, Isaac, while you answer, we're also going to throw up the terms and conditions of DeepSeek that we screen grabbed, which says that, well, everyone can see once we start rolling on it. But Isaac, how would you address that comment from chat about concerns about privacy?
Yes, you should have concerns. No, it's not safe to download. I think it's a very simple thing. It's sort of like, hey, I have a work laptop. Should I bring it into China? No, you should not. It's a simple no. Don't do it. And there's a lot of reasons why, but I'll be brief with that one.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, just to point out to our audience too, we did have a couple of comments. I've lost track of who made those comments, but they said they're also if they have concerns about data security, it also goes for other apps produced by other companies. I mean, we are only 10 years away from the NSA spying scandal in the US. There was exposure of the Israeli Pegasus software that was uploaded onto people's phones, and then could actually listen in to conversations and stuff like that. So I think there's a small number of people actually concerned about data privacy, and within that community of people who care about their data, I think it doesn't matter to them who gets it. They want it to be private. I mean, that's what privacy is. It doesn't end up in the hands of a government, no matter which government it is.
Right, and looking ahead, I know, Viola, I asked you about the future of DeepSeek. I would like to ask about the future of AI in the US, given what's happened. I want to roll a soundbite from Trump, and I'd love for all three of you guys to weigh in on what you think, you know, what signals have been sent about what the U.S. administration, the new administration, wants to do, what it should do. So let's roll that comment from Trump in response to DeepSeek's success.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser focused on competing to win, because we have the greatest scientists in the world. Even Chinese leadership told me that. This is very unusual when you hear a DeepSeek, when you hear somebody come up with something. We always have the ideas. We're always first. So I would say that's a positive. That could be very much a positive development. So instead of spending billions and billions, you'll spend less and you'll come up with, hopefully, the same solution.
So what are you guys hearing about what the Trump administration might do on the AI front? I don't know who wants to start. Clifford, you made a little face there.
Well, it's always just so hard to comment on things he says because he's so unpredictable. And I mean, I think the point is, yeah, it is a wake-up call and it is a shot across the bows. We still don't know what he's, I mean, he, you know, because he wanted to ban TikTok and then he doesn't want to ban TikTok because it was such a help to him during the election. So, and the popularity of it. So I think it's very difficult to say what the future of it is going to be in terms of whether he'll facilitate it, his close links to Elon Musk and what you know, the tech billionaire, what impact that could have on his thinking when it comes to how OpenAI will be encouraged. I mean, this is kind of a long way of saying it's a very difficult one to call because it's very unpredictable. It certainly has been a shot across the bows, and it's going to make people think again. But on the other hand, these are solid companies, and these are in many ways better products. You know, it's like the analyst was saying earlier about the Temu of AI. You know, that you're still going to have room for the better products, and going forward, probably the better products are the ones that the market is going to embrace.
Isaac and Viola, and I'm aware that we're kind of passing the top of the hour mark, so that's why I want to check in with you guys, make sure you guys don't have a meeting you're supposed to be in right now. But
I do, so I'll make my remarks and then thank you all for your time. So AI and crypto were two of the most important defections from Harris to the Trump camp. And so Trump is very supportive of what those industries want. And I do feel like in this particular case, he would love for US innovation to triumph. The devil, of course, is in the details on whether or not he can do that. From a Musk perspective, I mean, Musk despises OpenAI and Sam Altman because of the disputes that they've had. And so the question is, how much of Musk's political capital does he use to, say, even strengthen a Chinese AI over an American one as a way to take OpenAI down a couple pegs?
All right. Well, with that, Isaac, we're going to let you get going. Sorry that you are late for the next meeting, but thank you for joining us. Strategy Risks, guys. Check it out. Okay, so Viola, thank you. I don't know if you have something you're supposed to be doing right now, but let us know, and then let us know your thoughts in terms of the U.S. policy moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's very confusing what exactly Trump wants to do. He is talking about supporting the industry in general, but he's also making it harder for example, like immigrant engineers to come to the U.S. And then he's talking about like imposing more tariffs on semiconductors. So we will really need to like see what are the like actual policies that he's gonna do. But I think the direction of like competing with China, that's probably wouldn't change in the short term. All the like Chinese investments or like Chinese products will be pursue a national security lens, just like what happened to like Temu, TikTok, and in general, like Chinese innovation will be seen as something that the U.S. needs to surpass, to match, continue to lead, to enlarge the gap. And then maybe this is the moment. It's like, oh, the chip export control is not enough. We need to come up with something else.
Got it. Before we let you get going, Amien, any questions from people directly to Viola?
Well, some people are saying they still want advice whether or not to download DeepSeek. And Carolina Viena suggested, give me 2 years before I download DeepSeek like I did on TikTok. Is it a good bet to wait till the hype clears before consumers figure out what they're supposed to do here?
I think there's no right or wrong answer. If you do that, you're running a risk of like giving out your personal information to China. I think it really depends on how much you care about it. Some people are more careful about like, I don't want to give out anything, but I think a lot of users, they have downloaded DeepSeek. They don't mind the censorship. They want to experience the technology. And then some of them, like not everyone wants to ask about the Chinese president or about the chairman, and then they do want to get a taste of like what the AI part is like.
Yeah, and I think maybe like using a VPN might help. Using the browser version instead of downloading the app onto your phone might mitigate some of the issues. And then once you use a VPN, not to use your regular browser, but use it in incognito mode as another layer. But those are just some mitigating factors. It still will manage to, I suppose, find some way to find information about you. So that's a tricky one. Viola, any final thoughts on your end before we let you get going? Have we missed anything that you want to impart in terms of information about DeepSeek?
I think we covered a lot, but also I think the message is like sometimes we talk about like how the Chinese government controls everything, it directs all the industry, but there's still a lot of chaos, a lot of like individual entrepreneurship that exists in the industry, and then there are people trying to navigate both the maybe the control from the US side, but also the Chinese government control, and then they're trying to carve out their own paths in different ways, and then that still leads to innovation at one place or another. Not everything is like under kind of like step-by-step control from the government, but yeah, it is, the government definitely is trying to catch up, like trying to control more. Yeah.
Well, let's see what happens with DeepSeek and Chinese AI development in general. Viola, Zhou, thank you so much for joining us. Viola from Rest of World. Check out Rest of World. Check out her reporting. Check her out on social media as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so...
just one other thing to bring in, maybe that we can wrap up with this thought, is the lectures from Leeds says competition is good for the consumer. And it's been very disruptive. Lots of people lost a lot of money. There's a lot of questions about censorship. But in the end, I remember what discussion we were having right before this news broke about DeepSeek, and that was that everybody was trying to do AI. It was the arms race of the future, and we were going to need a lot of energy. We basically have to just stop worrying about global warming for the next 20 years so that AI could run its course. And what we're seeing now is maybe we're seeing solutions to a problem that we thought we had just a few weeks ago, and I think that can also be emphasized, that maybe there's a way forward here that would solve some of the looming problems of AI.
Yeah, and I think competition is good because in some ways American companies have been so dominant And the competition that they have been caught up in is one of money, right? Just getting more investors to throw money at the problem. Brute force is what they're saying. That's the term they're using. Yeah. And as it turns out, once there's a Chinese company with limitations to access to chips, limitations to money, and they've had to be scrappy, they've come up with a challenging alternative. That's a wake-up call, as everyone is saying. But in some ways, American companies haven't been very innovative because they've just been relying on spending more money, buying more processors, and maybe that's not the way to go.
And it could also be an explanation why Germany has nothing. It's just sitting this one out as a bystander, like one of the people in the comment section said, because I've heard AI described as a solution in search of a problem. And Germany doesn't do that. The EU doesn't generally first come up with a solution and look for a problem. They wait till the problems build and build and build, and then go into their meetings and they decide on what the best way forward is. But honestly, I would defend that because throwing all these public resources into it when really most people just want to get to work on time, have housing that they can afford and live in good, safe cities. I mean.
Says the late adopter on technology.
Exactly.
That's what European is all about. Waiting until the problem is really big and then dealing with it.
Just to remind everyone of the meme, if they didn't see it earlier.
Right.
That meme where we've got...
that's what I was thinking of when I said that.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to quickly share my screen, but this whole point that...
Exactly, the pollution from the plastic water bottles is the only problem that we have right now, and Europe actually is coming up with solutions for it.
So Europe just waiting and completely not involved.
I love the Google-eyed sort of dragon. Whoa. Sorry, I shouldn't make that. Oh, see, it wasn't on.
Maybe. It wasn't on camera. Yeah, you might be memed otherwise.
I made a copy of the dragon thing. Anyways, Dustin.
Yes.
Polls.
The poll. Thank you guys for voting so much. It's like a significant amount of people have voted. It's 2,500 people have taken part in our poll today. And there's a very clear result, which I find interesting. So the question was, DeepSeek promises to be cheaper and open source. Is that a good thing? And a resounding yes to that. Yes, AI should be free, say 75% of people. Then we have 12% of people saying governments need to regulate AI, 7% of people saying it's fine as long as I can use it, and only 4% of people are saying no one should be using AI.
I have bad news for you guys. The majority of you guys who voted and said AI should be free, nothing is free. And if the product is free, you are the product.
Hang on a second. Isn't DW free?
Nothing is free except for
DW.
Or a fisher's stance.
Clifford, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's just interesting. I was just thinking, if this was a Russian product, if a Russian company had come out with this, how would we'd be looking at it differently, wouldn't we? And so I think that I still think I like the open source thing. I like the company way because it's kind of nerds. It's not flashy tycoons. These are I like that nerdish aspect to it. And I think it's going to be something that it's just going to speed things up as OpenAI moves as AI moves forward to where machines can are teaching themselves, and I think it's just a question of speeding up the pace. So I think ultimately we won't really remember it. And it's like Isaac said earlier about how, these stories tend to take on a life of their own. And at the moment, it's extremely important and it was a big loss in the stock market. But ultimately, I think AI is heading in a particular direction. And I think this is just going to speed it up.
You mean we won't remember it because our brains will be turned to mush?
That's right.
By just AI?
Yeah, that's right. We'll be organ banks for blue pills.
Alex, do you have any takeaways from the conversation? I know that you were...
I thought it was just very interesting for me. Well, number one, that it hasn't worked for this entire stream has been disappointing because I really wanted to be able to...
I think DeepSeek is so popular right now.
So popular,
it must be
clearly.
Inundated.
So that was a bit disappointing because I was really hoping that we could have a bit of fun with that. But I think... for me, well, number one, I thought it was fascinating seeing the photos of the founder because he is just so different from how I imagined him to be. So I thought that was interesting. But two, I do think this whole issue of censorship always worries me a little bit. So I don't have TikTok, for example, and I would be concerned about DeepSeek. But let's just see what happens. I do also need to know that it will work before I would myself download it. But that would be that's sort of what I took from it. I think particularly what Isaac was saying. Oh, and Clifford, of course, because you've said that as well. But I thought that was interesting.
Let me just take this moment to thank our chat. I want to say I just wrote down some users that were really active. I probably forgot some of you, but this is really, I just want to say thanks to you for participating so much and giving me all these great points in the chat. Carolina Davos, Effort24, Zhang, Nile, Hiruaki, Prometheus, Rudra, and Teolich. I'm assuming none of those are your real names, but except Carolina, probably. But thanks so much for being here to all of you guys, not only the ones I've mentioned, of course.
Amien, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like I said my piece. I would also say that I think we need to be honest when we say censorship, because that was also pointed out earlier that it is a clash of values. I mean, nobody would want to use an AI model that was completely uncontrolled. I mean, they would want to use it themselves. They wouldn't want to live in a society where the AI wasn't controlled. I think everybody across the spectrum wants to control AI. They just have a different opinion on how to control it. So the real question is will we living in our set of values have any control over the future of AI? And I think that is the question that bothers everybody, because you see countries with a completely different set of values making the biggest developments, and you're worried that maybe I'll be living in a future where none of the values that I have are going to be shared with the dominant technology. And I think that's scary. And I think that's also why the EU is probably sitting this one out, because they are working on regulating AI in a sincere democratic way by asking their citizens how they want to regulate it, electing leaders to then decide how best to do that. And that takes a long time. And they're not going to be the ones dumping 500 billion on something they don't know what it's going to do, because they want to make sure that they live in a society. Well, I would hope, I mean, I'm not defending every policy out there, but this is what I would vote for, is that I live in a society where I get to determine what technology is used and how.
Even the Vatican has stepped in.
Yeah, I was on the fence about, as Amien was talking, I was on the fence and wondering, should we pull up this soundbite that we prepared earlier?
Maybe we could end with that.
We could kind of end with
the Holy See's opinion?
Yeah, the Vatican weighed in on AI, and it was actually very thoughtful. So actually, can Wade in the control room roll on it?
And I think part of what we want to reflect on is how we will educate using AI. But I think we also want to reflect on how we will educate people to live with AI. That people will learn to be able to assess more critically how AI works, become more attentive to what are the databases that are being used. Are they truly inclusive? Do they reflect the whole range of human experience?
The whole range of human experience. Such thoughtful words from the Vatican. And on that note, very unexpected. I bet you weren't expecting.
Not an endorsement of the Catholic Church,
that
but, you know,
we start with AI and DeepSeek and the Chinese Communist Party and all of that, and we end with the Catholic Church, but we're going to do it here on News Desk. I'm Melissa Chan. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us.
Yep. Thanks, everybody at the table and our guests.
Yep.
It was a pleasure.